Greetings, everybody. Hope you're well and safe. Welcome to User Delight with Microsoft Technology, a place for daily hacks. And if you'd like to know more, kindly scan the QR code here. Well, what we have today is an example of a simple example actually of creating a master list of assets and of springs in this case with images and respective barcodes among other things using Microsoft Power Apps, Teams, a SharePoint list, and the Azure Data Lake Store. And what we see here are entries that I've created before of various springs with their images and the respective barcodes that have been generated in SharePoint automatically. So let's actually create one, and I am going to click on a new request. We actually can select the spring, the picture of a spring, the image of a spring that we want to create a master list for. I'm going to give this a name and call this a variable pitch spring, and go down here, enter the material, which is chrome vanadium steel, fairly commonly used as a spring material, with a yield strength of 940 Newton per meter squared, shear modulus of 79,300, and the Young's modulus of 190,000. These are all material properties relative to the steel. And the picture of the spring here comes across as a URL. And this URL basically is obtained from the Azure Data Lake Store, where the image of the spring is actually stored. We'll talk about that later. In fact, I've actually done a video on this before. I'll put the link to the video in the post. So once we have filled this information out, if we were to now save this information, as you can see, the information is now stored in SharePoint, and the barcode here is automatically generated. So, and not only that, you're actually able to view the barcode, and from there the user can do whatever he or she wants to do, print it, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is relatively simple and easy to cobble up for end users who are in manufacturing on the shop floor, or in purchasing, or in the production setup, if you will, or in logistics as an example, right? So let us actually get into the details of this. So what I'm going to do first off is go over to my SharePoint here and go to my home site, right? I mean, this is my home site, and what you'll see up here is what's called as a tenant. Much like someone renting a condo, you have a tenant, and this says prudentia.sharepoint.com in Office 365. This uniquely identifies my address. And within this, we are able to create a site, much like you renting a room, right? So let us actually go ahead and create a site here. And I'm going to say a team site for collaboration purposes, and I'm going to call this barcode example, right? And I'm just going to say, a private site is fine. I'm going to say next. I'm not going to add any members here. I'm going to keep it private, and I am going to create the site. Now, once the site is actually created, if I go to site contents over here, which shows me everything there is on the site, I will then be able to go to site settings. And once I get into the site settings, you will see a whole bunch of configurations down here. And in the site collection administration, what we can do is go down to site collection features, right? Once we click on site collection features, I'm going to search for records management. I'll just say records, and there you go. You see in place records management here, and I'm actually going to activate this. Now, this is what gives us the ability to look at information management within your SharePoint site and within your SharePoint table. We'll get to that in a second. So now I'm going to click back on my site settings and click back on home. whereby I'm actually in my site, the barcode example site. And from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go create a new list, right? I'm going to go create a new list, and I'm going to say, a blank list, call this barcode example as well. I'm being very creative. Kindly excuse me. And I'm going to create this. And once I create this list, it comes with a title as a default. All this, folks, most likely will actually know from before. And if I were to go over to the list settings, list is nothing more than a table, right? It's just like an Excel table, except it's secure and it's online, right, on SharePoint. So I go to list settings over here, and then I'll go into information management policy settings, right? Once I get into this information management policy settings, I can click on the item here and turn on. It takes about 10 seconds to, and then I'm going to click on enable barcodes, right? And I'm going to click this policy on and then turn this on and say enable barcodes. And I'm just going to say OK. So this goes away and enables the barcodes, and I'm going to go back to list settings here. And if I were to go down below, I'll actually be able to see the main view with all items. So I'm going to click on this all items view. And as you can see here, you can get the barcode and the barcode value, both of them, right? And I'm going to turn those on, and I'm going to say OK and go back to my list. And as you can see, I get the barcode, which essentially is actually an image, and the barcode value, associated barcode value. From here, I can add a column, and I can say, hey, I want to add a description of sorts, right? Description, and I'm going to save this, right? Now, once I have my list already, I can go over to my Power Apps. I'll just log into Power Apps here, powerapps.com, and I'm going to click back on the app that we just saw. Right? I'm just going to click back on the app. It takes about a minute for it to log in. Just say sign in, that might help. And this will log us in. And I'm going to click on my apps here, and I'm going to get down to my master assets app, and I'm going to edit this and get into the application. Right, I'm going to override this. Looks like it's actually open elsewhere, but that's okay, not a problem. And I'm going to ignore this, and I'm going to actually go add a new screen, a blank screen like so, right? Here what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually connect to the SharePoint list here, right? To the list that we just saw. So I believe this one is actually in a new site called Barcode Example. So I'm going to copy this URL to the list, to the site. I'm going to put it down here. I'm going to connect to this one, and there is our barcode example. So I'm going to connect to the site. Once I connect to the site, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a data table here so that I can view whatever is in this table, which as of now, there is nothing in this table, right? Because we haven't added any data to this. So I'm going to move it to one side here. And then on the right-hand side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a form, an editable form, and then move it to the right here, and then say, give me the same exact data source, the barcode example. Okay, so this goes away, and I'm gonna say, give it all in one, one column, and I'm gonna remove this attachment here. And then if you were to open up this form and go to the barcode value, this barcode data card here actually has got an image control, which means to say that if we were to submit data into the database and it generates a barcode, the barcode is going to be displayed here, right? And we can make it, we can bring it here and display it here. Okay, well, let's get into that in a second. So what we're going to do basically is we're going to get into the form and get into the item property and then say data table 3 dot selected. So I've aligned the data table to the form. By the way, it's great practice to name these as you create it so that you don't get into this confusion. Okay. All right. So once we have this, I'm going to input a few buttons here. So I'm going to add a button to make a new request. So I'm just going to say new request, right? And then I'm going to add another button here, replicate this one, and I'm going to actually say save request, right? And then I'm going to replicate this again, and I'm going to basically say edit request, right? And I'm in the new request, I'm going to make sure that the form mode becomes new, right? New form, and then the form name is 3. And then here I'm going to say submit form, and then my form 3, reset it, although I'm not terribly sure if it's actually resetting in this case. And then we'll say I want to be able to view the form so that once I edit something, once I add something, I don't want people to be mucking around with it, right? Unless they absolutely have to. And if they have to, then they click on the edit form. I'm going to say edit form here and form 3, like so, right? So now we are actually ready to enter information to the database. So if I play this app and then say new request, I'm going to actually call this Lenovo PC as an example, right? So I have no other information that I'm description. Let us say this is a Lenovo Carbon, right? So once Carbon, if I can spell it right. So once I've got this information in, I'm going to save this request. The moment this request actually gets saved, and what you will notice is if I were to go to the database and refresh the database here, that a barcode image has actually been generated. If I were to click on this image, right, and this is auto-generated, right, so you don't have to worry about creating barcodes. SharePoint, that's a beautiful thing about using a SharePoint list. And if I were to click on this, it gives me up here a URL. So I'm going to copy this URL, and then I'm going to put this in a notepad. And we'll examine this link really quickly. And you will actually see that it's basically giving us the tenant information, the site information, and from here, it's looking basically at the ID. It's giving us the barcode image of the first item. And then it is basically telling us here is the ID of the list, right? So if we make this dynamic, we should be able to see the images of all the items that we have actually saved into the database. It can be dynamic, right? So I'm going to actually pick this up, and I'm going to go back here to my app. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this image here. I'm going to remove this parent.default, right? Remove this. I'm going to, first of all, I'll need to unlock this. I'm going to say remove this parent.default, and then I'm going to say make this dynamic like so, and up until there, and from there all the way to the very end, right? And this one, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to concatenate, and I'm going to say data table 3 dot selected dot ID, right? ID here, and I am going to add an and to concatenate, and like so. And there you go. We have our barcode here, right? And that's how I'm able to view the barcodes as I submit information to the database. And then once the information is there, I am able to actually look at the barcode for existing items, right? Pretty darn cool. Now, as a user. Now, the second aspect of it is how do we actually get images, to coordinate with the barcode, right? There is a video that I've done. It's a fairly long video as to how we could connect to an Azure data lake and then bring the images over. So kindly look at that video. That'll give you a good idea of what you need to do to set up the data lake, to look at the storage component of the data lake. It looks, in fact, actually I have it right down here. I might as well show you this. Is the Azure data lake looks like so. My subscription, inside of which is my data lake. And inside of that are these containers. And for us end users, these you can look at it more akin to folders, right? So there are all these folders, and I have a folder for the images of the springs here, right? And if I were to right mouse on it and then copy the URL and go online and paste it here, lo and behold, I can actually see the image of the URL. And there are various settings for this that you would need to configure, all of which is actually mentioned in the other video, right? So getting back to the app, and if we were to get back to the barcode screen, you can very easily see now that you can coordinate getting the images from your data lake here, displaying them in your form, and as you submit information to the database, you can actually see the barcode associated with the image and the information that you've entered into the master tables. So it's all in one consolidated place, visible to everybody. And if you'd like to print this to whatever, you can. And it makes management of master asset, creating master assets ever so easy. And from there, you can use it to scan any barcodes for daily transactions and so on and so forth. I trust you found this useful. A little bit of a daily hack for us end users to make ourselves as productive as possible. Thank you very much.